When I think back to that freezing January night 5 years ago, I can still feel the snow melting through my thin canvas shoes as I stood on the porch of the house I'd called home for 16 years. My father's face was purple with rage, veins bulging on his forehead as he screamed words that cut deeper than the winter wind. He didn't care that I was his daughter, didn't care that I was shivering in just a hoodie and jeans, didn't care that what happened to me wasn't my choice. All he saw was shame, a stain on his perfect reputation in our small Connecticut town, where everyone knew everyone's business and appearances mattered more than truth. The pregnancy test had fallen out of my backpack that afternoon when I was looking for my chemistry homework. Such a small plastic stick, but it changed everything in seconds. My mother found it first, her face going white as she held it between two fingers, like it was contaminated. When my father came home from his job at the bank, still wearing his pressed suit and conservative tie, she showed it to him without a word. I'll never forget the way his expression changed from confusion to understanding to absolute fury. He didn't ask me what happened, didn't ask if I was okay, didn't ask who the father was. Maybe if he had, I could have told him about Mr. Richardson, the family friend who volunteered at church, the man who cornered me at the summer barbecue when everyone else was watching fireworks, the man who was 43 years old, with a wife and 3 kids, who whispered that no one would believe me if I told. My father threw my things into garbage bags while my mother stood in the doorway wringing her hands but saying nothing. 16 years of my life stuffed into 3 black plastic bags like I was trash to be taken to the curb. He grabbed my arm hard enough to leave bruises and dragged me to the front door. The neighbors' Christmas lights were still up, twinkling mockingly in the darkness as he shoved me outside. "Don't you dare come back here," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You're no daughter of mine." The door slammed with such finality that I knew he meant every word. I stood there for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, my breath coming out in white puffs in the frigid air. Where do you go when you're 16 and pregnant and have nowhere to go? My friends were all asleep in their warm beds, and even if they weren't, their parents would never let me stay once they found out why I'd been thrown out. The homeless shelter was across town, and I'd heard stories about what happened to young girls there, so I walked to the only place that stayed open all night in our town, the 24-hour gas station near the interstate. The fluorescent lights were harsh after the darkness outside, and the cashier looked at me suspiciously as I huddled in the bathroom, trying to warm my numb fingers under the hand dryer. I stayed there until he knocked on the door and told me I had to buy something or leave. With the $20 I had in my wallet, I bought a coffee I didn't want and sat in the corner booth watching truckers come and go, trying to figure out what to do next. My phone buzzed with texts from classmates who'd already heard through the lightning-fast, small-town gossip network. Some were cruel, calling me names I don't want to repeat. Others were curious, asking for details like my trauma was entertainment. I turned it off. As the sky started to lighten, I knew I had to move. School would start soon, and at least there I could be warm and maybe figure out my next step. I walked the 3 miles to Riverside High School, my garbage bags getting heavier with each step, the plastic handles cutting into my frozen fingers. The janitor, Mr. Luis, was unlocking the doors when I arrived. He took one look at me, the bags, the red eyes, the shivering, and his face softened. "You can put those in my office for now," he said quietly, leading me to a small room that smelled like cleaning supplies and coffee. "There's a couch if you need to rest." I dozed fitfully on that lumpy couch until the first bell rang, then dragged myself to the bathroom to try to make myself presentable. My face in the mirror was a stranger's, pale, hollow-eyed, with mascara smudged despite my attempts to clean it. Other girls came in chattering about weekend plans and homework, falling silent when they saw me. I locked myself in a stall and waited for them to leave, pressing my hands against my still flat stomach and trying to process that there was a life growing inside me. A life I never asked for, never wanted, but was now my responsibility. The morning passed in a blur. I went through the motions of attending classes, but couldn't focus on anything the teachers were saying. During third period English, Ms. Foster noticed I wasn't taking notes on her discussion of the Scarlet Letter. Ironic, considering I was living my own version of Hester Prynne's story. She was a young teacher, maybe early 30s, with kind brown eyes behind stylish glasses and a way of making even the most reluctant students care about literature. She'd always encouraged my writing, telling me I had a gift for capturing emotion on the page. "Sarah, can you stay after class?" she asked as the bell rang. I waited while the other students filed out, my heart pounding. Teachers were mandatory reporters. Would she call social services, the police, my parents? But when the room was empty, she just pulled a chair up next to mine and sat down. "I heard what happened," she said gently. "Mrs. Chen saw you coming in with garbage bags this morning." I started to make up some excuse, but the concern in her eyes broke something inside me. The whole story came pouring out. Mr. Richardson at the barbecue, the pregnancy test, my father's rage, the night spent in the gas station bathroom. She listened without interrupting, her face cycling through shock, anger, and deep sadness. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked, "Where are you planning to stay tonight?" I shrugged, trying to seem like it wasn't a big deal, even though terror was clawing at my insides. "I'll figure something out," I mumbled. She shook her head firmly. "No, you're coming home with me." I started to protest. Teachers couldn't do that, could they? It had to be against some rule. But she was already pulling out her phone, calling the principal to explain the situation. "I'm taking emergency custody as a temporary measure," I heard her say. "Yes, I understand the protocols. I'll handle the paperwork." The rest of the day felt surreal. Ms. Foster, "Call me Jennifer when we're not in school," she said, cleared it with the administration, and even got permission for me to leave early to avoid the after-school gossip mill. We stopped by Mr. Luis's office to get my garbage bags, and he pressed a $20 bill into my hand despite my protests. "For emergencies," he said gruffly, not meeting my eyes. I think he had daughters of his own. Jennifer's car was a sensible Honda Civic with a stack of papers to grade in the back seat and a coffee-stained copy of Patricia Highsmith's novel on the passenger seat. She moved it so I could sit down, apologizing for the mess. The drive to her house took us out of the main part of town, past the subdivisions where my former friends lived, to an older neighborhood with mature trees and houses that had character instead of cookie-cutter sameness. "I know this is overwhelming," she said as we drove. "But I want you to know you're safe now. We'll figure out the rest as we go." Her house was a 2-story colonial with butter yellow siding and white shutters, the kind of place that looked like it should smell like fresh-baked cookies and have a reading nook in every room. And it did. Have reading nooks, that is. Books were everywhere, overflowing from built-in shelves, stacked on side tables, tucked into corners. "I have a problem," she said with a self-deprecating laugh when she saw me staring. "My wife used to say I was one step away from being a hoarder, but only for books." The past tense didn't escape me. "Used to say." There were photos on the mantel. Jennifer with a beautiful woman with short silver hair and a brilliant smile. They were laughing in most of them, arms around each other at the beach, at what looked like their wedding on various trips. "That's Elena," Jennifer said softly, following my gaze. "She died 2 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. It was quick." The pain in her voice was still raw, and I understood why she lived alone in this big house meant for a family. She showed me to the guest room, a sunny space with a queen bed covered in a quilt that looked handmade and more books on floating shelves. "This was going to be the nursery," she said, then caught herself. "But that's ancient history. It's your room now for as long as you need it." She helped me unpack my garbage bags, hanging my clothes in the closet without commenting on how few there were. When we got to the bottom of one bag and found my journal, water-stained and worn from years of writing, she smiled. "A fellow writer. I knew I liked you for a reason." That first night in a real bed after the horror of the previous 24 hours, I cried until I couldn't breathe. Everything hit me at once. The assault that I'd tried so hard to bury, the pregnancy I didn't want, the family that threw me away, and now this unexpected kindness from someone who had no obligation to help me. Jennifer must have heard because she knocked softly on the door. "I'm making hot chocolate," she said, "with the tiny marshmallows. Come down if you want some." I found her in the kitchen, stirring 2 mugs at the stove. She'd changed into pajama pants with little typewriters on them and an old Yale University sweatshirt. Without makeup, she looked younger, more vulnerable. We sat at her kitchen table, scarred wood that had clearly seen many meals, and drank our chocolate in companionable silence. "I know you have a lot of decisions to make," she finally said, "about the pregnancy, about your future. I want you to know that whatever you choose, I'll support you. No judgment, no pressure. Your body, your choice." It was the first time anyone had said that to me. My father had made it clear that abortion was murder and adoption was abandonment. My mother had just cried. But here was Jennifer, offering me something I'd never had, agency over my own life. "I don't know what to do," I admitted. "I never wanted. I didn't choose." I couldn't finish, but she understood. "I know," she said gently, "and I'm so sorry that happened to you. Have you considered talking to someone? A counselor who specializes in trauma?" The idea terrified me, but I nodded. Maybe talking to someone who didn't know me, didn't know my family, would help. The next few weeks fell into a routine. Jennifer drove me to school early to avoid the worst of the stares and whispers. I ate lunch in her classroom, helping her organize papers and clean the whiteboard while she told me stories about her teaching disasters and triumphs. She found me a therapist who specialized in trauma and teenage pregnancy, Dr. Martinez, who had an office filled with plants and never made me feel ashamed. Slowly, I started processing what had happened to me, started saying the word rape out loud instead of dancing around it. At my first prenatal appointment, Jennifer came with me. The nurse assumed she was my mother, and neither of us corrected her. Seeing the tiny flutter on the ultrasound screen made everything real in a way the positive test hadn't. There was a living thing inside me, growing and developing, completely dependent on my body for survival. The doctor explained my options matter-of-factly: continuation, abortion, adoption. I had time to decide, she said, but not unlimited time. Jennifer held my hand during the exam, and I squeezed back hard enough to hurt. We went to a diner afterward, and I pushed pancakes around my plate while my mind raced. "What would you do?" I asked Jennifer. She considered carefully before answering. "I can't answer that because I'm not you. But I can tell you that Elena and I tried for years to have a baby. IVF, donors, the whole expensive, heartbreaking process. It never worked for us." She paused, sipping her coffee. "That doesn't mean you should continue the pregnancy for my sake or anyone else's. This has to be your decision based on what's best for your life." That night, I made a pros and cons list in my journal. Pros: maybe something good could come from something terrible. The baby was innocent. Adoption could give a family their dream. Cons: I was 16, the pregnancy would derail my education. I'd have to see my rapist's features in my child's face. My body would never be the same. The cons list was longer, but somehow the decision crystallized anyway. I would continue the pregnancy and place the baby for adoption. Not because my father would have demanded it, but because it felt like the right choice for me. Jennifer supported my decision without question, immediately researching adoption agencies and lawyers. We found an agency that specialized in open adoptions, where I could choose the family and have ongoing contact if I wanted. The social worker, Cheryl, was a black woman with natural hair and a warm smile who'd been an adoptee herself. She understood the complexity of the situation and never once suggested I should parent the baby myself. "You're making a brave, loving choice," she said at our first meeting. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." School became increasingly difficult as my pregnancy started to show. The whispers turned to open stares and cruel comments. Someone started a rumor that the baby was Jennifer's husband's, not knowing she'd never been married to a man. Another story claimed I'd seduced a teacher. The truth, that a respected church volunteer had raped me, was apparently less believable than their salacious fiction. I stopped going to the cafeteria, stopped walking the halls between classes more than necessary. Jennifer arranged for me to do independent study for my core classes, coming to her empty classroom during her prep period for instruction. My mother reached out once, a tentative text asking how I was. When I responded that I was safe and continuing the pregnancy, she sent back a paragraph about forgiveness and coming home if I would just apologize to my father and agree to give the baby to a proper Christian family through their church. I showed the message to Dr. Martinez, who helped me craft a response setting boundaries. My mother never texted again, but sometimes I'd see her car drive slowly past Jennifer's house, never stopping. As winter turned to spring and my belly grew rounder, Jennifer and I developed our own little family rhythm. She'd grade papers while I did homework at the dining room table. We cooked together. She taught me how to make her grandmother's marinara sauce and Elena's famous chocolate chip cookies. On weekends, we'd go to used bookstores and farmers markets, building a life that felt almost normal if you didn't look too close. She came to every prenatal appointment, held my hair when morning sickness hit, and rubbed my feet when they swelled. One evening in April, I felt the baby move for the first time. We were watching a movie, and suddenly there was this flutter, like butterfly wings inside me. "Oh!" I gasped, and Jennifer immediately paused the film. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" I grabbed her hand and placed it on my stomach, waiting. Then it happened again, stronger this time. Her eyes filled with tears. "Hi, little one," she whispered to my belly. "I'm your Aunt Jenny." That's when I knew. No matter what happened next, we were a family. The adoption process moved forward slowly. Cheryl brought us profiles of waiting families, and I spent hours reading their letters, looking at their photos, trying to imagine my baby in their lives. There was a couple from California, 2 dads who'd been together for 15 years, a single woman in Oregon who was a pediatric surgeon, a married couple from Texas who already had 2 adopted children. But when I read the profile of Mark and Lisa from Vermont, something clicked. They were in their early 40s, had been trying for a decade, and Lisa was an elementary school teacher like Jennifer. Their letter was honest about their struggles with infertility and their promise to tell any child about their adoption story from day one. We met them at a neutral location, a coffee shop halfway between our towns. I was 7 months pregnant by then, waddling more than walking, and nervous enough to throw up in the parking lot. Jennifer held my hair and told me we could leave if I wanted, but I needed to meet them. Needed to see if the feeling I got from their profile was real. Mark was tall and lanky, with prematurely gray hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Lisa was petite, with auburn hair and a smile that reached her whole face. They were nervous, too. Lisa's hands shook as she lifted her teacup. We talked for 2 hours. About their home. A farmhouse with 5 acres and a barn they wanted to convert to an art studio. Their families, supportive and excited. Their philosophy on parenting, love, boundaries, and lots of books. They asked about my plans for the future, and I told them about wanting to be a writer, about hoping to go to college. "We'd love to support that however we can," Mark said earnestly. "We believe in education." They showed me the nursery they'd started preparing, painted soft green with a reading chair already in place. By the end of the meeting, I knew. These were the people who would raise my baby. The legal agreements were drawn up. Open adoption with letters and photos twice a year, the possibility of visits when the child was older if everyone agreed. They offered financial support for my education, which Jennifer helped me navigate. Not payment for the baby, but investment in my future. Everything felt surreal, but right. I started a journal for the baby, writing letters about why I made this choice, about how much love went into the decision. Jennifer helped me pick out a few small gifts. A hand-knitted blanket, a first edition of Where the Wild Things Are, a silver rattle engraved with Love Always. At 36 weeks, my water broke during English class. Of course it did. Jennifer later joked that the baby knew where we felt most comfortable. She calmly told the class to continue reading Chapter 12 while she helped me to the nurse's office, but I could see the panic in her eyes. We'd prepared for this moment, had a hospital bag packed, had all the numbers programmed into our phones, but when it actually happened, all preparation went out the window. Jennifer drove to the hospital, probably breaking every speed law, while I tried to remember the breathing exercises from our birthing class. Labor lasted 14 hours. Jennifer never left my side, feeding me ice chips, rubbing my back, being my voice when I couldn't speak through the contractions. Mark and Lisa waited in a separate room. We'd agreed they wouldn't be present for the birth, but could meet the baby after I'd had time alone first. When the pain got unbearable and I cried for my mother, Jennifer became my mother, whispering encouragement and strength I didn't know I had. "You're doing so good, sweetheart. You're the bravest person I know. Just a little more." When they finally placed the baby on my chest, a girl, 6 pounds of perfect with a head of dark hair, the world shifted. I prepared myself not to feel anything, to stay detached, but love hit me like a tidal wave. She was beautiful, with tiny fingers that gripped mine and eyes that seemed to see straight through me. Jennifer was crying openly as she took the first photos. "Hi, sweet girl," I whispered. "I'm your birth mama, and this is your Aunt Jenny. We love you so much." I had 24 hours. That was what we'd agreed on. One day for me to say hello and goodbye. Jennifer helped me give her the first bath, change the first diaper, offer the first bottle since I'd chosen not to breastfeed. We took hundreds of photos and videos. I recorded myself singing the lullabies my grandmother had sung to me before she died, wanting the baby to have something of our family history that wasn't tainted by my parents' rejection. Jennifer read her stories in different voices, making me laugh through my tears. When Mark and Lisa came in the next day, I saw their faces transform at the sight of their daughter. The joy, the disbelief, the instant love. It confirmed I'd chosen right. Lisa was crying too hard to speak at first, just holding the baby like she was made of spun glass. Mark kept saying thank you over and over until I told him to stop, that this was what was meant to be. We did a small ceremony that Cheryl had suggested. I placed the baby in Lisa's arms officially, symbolically transferring parental rights. "Her name is Emma," I said, "after my grandmother. But you can change it if you want." "Emma is perfect," Lisa whispered. Leaving the hospital without Emma was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Jennifer practically carried me to the car while I sobbed so hard I couldn't catch my breath. She drove us home in silence, letting me fall apart without trying to fix it. That night, she climbed into bed with me like I was a little kid, holding me while I cried myself empty. "It hurts, because you love her," she said into the darkness. "And that love doesn't go away. It just changes shape." The first few weeks were brutal. My body was recovering from birth, but had no baby to care for. My breasts ached with milk I'd dried up with medication. I bled and cramped and felt hollow. Jennifer took time off work to stay with me, making sure I ate, helping me shower when I couldn't find the energy, sitting with me while I pumped breast milk to donate because I needed to do something useful with my body's preparations for a baby who wasn't there. The hormones were vicious, making me swing between numbness and hysteria, but slowly, very slowly, it got better. Lisa sent photos of Emma sleeping, Emma in her car seat going home, Emma meeting her grandparents. They were careful to include notes about how grateful they were, how loved she was. I started therapy specifically for birth mothers, joining a support group where I could talk to others who understood this particular grief. Jennifer went back to work, but called between every class. We developed new routines that didn't revolve around prenatal appointments and baby preparation. When school started in the fall, I was 17 and officially a senior. The gossip had mostly died down over the summer, replaced by newer scandals. I threw myself into academics with new determination. College wasn't just a vague dream anymore. It was a goal, a promise I'd made to Emma and myself. Jennifer helped me with applications, essays about resilience and growth that made admissions officers cry, we hoped. My grades were excellent, my test scores strong. I had a story that set me apart, even if it wasn't one I'd chosen. That October, an envelope arrived that would change everything again. Jennifer had been named Teacher of the Year for the state, nominated by students and fellow teachers for her dedication and innovative teaching methods. But the thing that made her cry was the nomination letter written by a student who chose to remain anonymous, talking about how Ms. Foster had saved their life by showing them that families could be chosen, not just born. We both knew who wrote it. The award came with a monetary prize that Jennifer tried to give to me for college. I refused, but we compromised. She'd use half for classroom supplies, and half would go into a fund for students in crisis, the Jennifer Foster Emergency Fund, though she hated having her name on it. Within a month, it had helped 3 students, one whose family lost their home to fire, one who needed glasses their parents couldn't afford, and one who needed a graphing calculator for AP Calculus. Watching her turn her pain into purpose taught me more than any classroom lesson could. Winter brought college acceptances and hard decisions. I got into several good schools with decent financial aid, but the full ride to Boston University for their journalism program was impossible to turn down. It meant leaving Jennifer, leaving the safety of the life we'd built, but she was nothing but supportive. "This is what we've been working toward," she said when I worried about abandoning her. "I'll be so proud watching you fly." We spent spring planning, dorm supplies, class schedules, weekend visit promises. Emma's first birthday hit me harder than expected. Mark and Lisa invited me to the party, but understood when I declined. Instead, Jennifer and I had our own celebration. We baked a cake and looked at all the photos from the past year. Emma crawling, Emma's first tooth, Emma taking her first steps. She was perfect and happy and loved, which was all I'd wanted for her. I wrote her a letter for her 18th birthday, sealing it in an envelope that Mark and Lisa would keep safe. Jennifer did the same, my chosen family extending their love to the child I'd carried but couldn't raise. That summer passed in a blur of preparation and bittersweet lasts. Last movie night in our pajamas, last farmer's market Sunday, last writing session at the kitchen table. The night before I left for Boston, we sat on the porch swing where Jennifer had told me about Elena, where I'd felt Emma kick for the first time, where we'd become a family. "You know you changed my life too, right?" Jennifer said quietly. "I was just existing after Elena died, going through the motions. You gave me purpose again, someone to love and fight for." The drive to Boston was quiet, both of us saving our words. Jennifer helped me move into my dorm room, meeting my roommate, a bubbly girl from California who seemed nice, setting up my desk just right. When it was time for her to go, we stood by her car, neither wanting to be the first to say goodbye. "This isn't an ending," she said firmly, hugging me tight. "This is a chapter break. And you know the best stories have lots of chapters." I watched her drive away, my chosen mother, my saved, knowing she was right. College was everything I'd dreamed and more. Hard, yes. Lonely sometimes, absolutely. But I threw myself into journalism classes, student newspaper work, building a life that honored all the sacrifices made to get me there. I called Jennifer every Sunday, telling her about professors and parties, and the boy in my poetry workshop who made me laugh. She sent care packages with books and homemade cookies and notes that said things like, "Remember to eat vegetables," and "So proud of you, sweetheart." I went home, because that's what Jennifer's house would always be, for Thanksgiving. She picked me up at the bus station, and it felt like no time had passed. We cooked together, watched old movies, graded her current students' papers like we used to. She updated me on the emergency fund, now supporting 24 students and growing, her dating life, non-existent, but she was open to possibilities, her book club's latest drama, normal chosen family things that made my heart full. The call came during finals week of freshman year. Jennifer's number at 2 a.m., which could only mean something terrible. But it wasn't her voice on the line. It was a stranger, a nurse, saying Jennifer had listed me as her emergency contact and there had been an accident. Car crash on black ice. Critical condition. Get here as soon as you can. I don't remember the bus ride home, just suddenly being in the hospital where Jennifer looked so small in the bed, machines breathing for her. The doctors were kind but honest. Severe brain injury, minimal brain activity. The machines were keeping her body alive, but Jennifer, my Jennifer, wasn't really there anymore. They mentioned that I was her medical power of attorney, showed me papers she'd filed making it official. At 19, I had to decide whether to keep my chosen mother on life support. The irony wasn't lost on me. She'd held my hand through impossible choices, and now I had to make one for her. I sat by her bed for 3 days, holding her hand, talking to her, begging for a sign. Her teacher friends came by with stories and flowers. Former students left cards. Even my old principal stopped in to pay respects. On the third night, alone with just the sound of machines, I pulled out Jennifer's copy of Elena's favorite poetry book. I read aloud the way she used to read to me, and when I got to the Mary Oliver poem about wild geese and finding your place in the family of things, I knew what she would want. The next morning, I told the doctors I was ready to let her go. They made her comfortable, removed the breathing tube, let nature take its course. I held her hand and told her about Emma's latest photo, walking confidently now with Lisa's auburn hair. about my A in investigative journalism, about how the emergency fund had just helped its 50th student. I told her she was the mother I'd needed, the family I'd chosen, the love that saved me. She slipped away peacefully just after sunset, and I knew somehow that Elena had been waiting for her. The funeral was standing room only. Students, colleagues, community members whose children she'd taught, and families helped by the fund all came to honor her. I spoke about chosen family and second chances, and how one person's kindness could ripple out in waves that touched countless lives. How a teacher who took in a desperate student had changed not just one life, but potentially generations. The emergency fund received so many donations that day it could become a permanent scholarship program. I found out later that Jennifer had left me everything: the house, her retirement savings, a letter explaining that I was the daughter she and Elena had always wanted. The letter destroyed me and rebuilt me simultaneously. I donated the house to become a transitional living space for homeless LGBTQ+ youth, keeping her mission alive. The money went toward finishing my education debt-free and establishing the Foster Elena Foundation for students in crisis. Jennifer and Elena's love story, interrupted by death, continued through the lives they touched. I graduated magna cum laude with a degree in journalism and a minor in social work. Mark and Lisa brought Emma to my graduation. She was 4 by then, chattering nonstop about preschool and her new baby brother, adopted from foster care. She didn't know who I was beyond Mama and Daddy's special friend Sarah, but she let me hug her and told me she liked my funny hat. Watching her with her parents, secure and loved and thriving, I knew every hard choice had been worth it. My first job was at a newspaper covering education policy, where I made sure stories about students in crisis got told with dignity and complexity. I volunteered with teen mothers, sharing my story when it helped, staying quiet when it didn't. I fell in love carefully with a fellow journalist who understood that my past wasn't something to overcome, but part of who I was. When I told him about Emma on our 5th date, he asked to see her photos, commenting on how much joy she radiated. 5 years after Jennifer's death, 10 years after that snowy night when my father threw me out, I stood in front of a conference room full of social workers and educators presenting on supporting pregnant and parenting students. My PowerPoint included statistics, but my power came from story. Jennifer taking me in, choosing to see potential instead of shame, teaching me that family was about showing up consistently with love. How one person's compassion had saved multiple lives, creating ripples that continued to spread. After my presentation, a young teacher approached me nervously. She had a student, she said, 16 and pregnant and just kicked out by her parents. Did I have any resources beyond the official channels? I handed her my card, told her about the foundation, gave her practical advice, but what I really wanted to say was, take her home. Love her fiercely. Show her that this isn't the end of her story. Be her, Jennifer. Change her life and let her change yours. Create the family you both need. That night in my apartment, I looked at the photo wall I'd created. Jennifer and Elena laughing at their wedding, Emma taking her first steps, my college graduation, the first student helped by the foundation. My chosen family, complicated and beautiful, and built from the ashes of trauma into something powerful. I thought about my birth parents, whom I hadn't spoken to in a decade, and felt only distant pity. They'd thrown away a daughter and missed everything I'd become. Sometimes when the world feels especially harsh, I remember that snowy night when I thought my life was over. How could I have known that losing one family would lead me to find a better one? That a teacher's kindness would reshape my entire future? That choosing adoption for Emma would eventually help me pour love into hundreds of other young people in crisis? The 17-year-old me, scared and pregnant and alone, could never have imagined the life I'm living now. Jennifer was right about stories having many chapters. Mine started with assault and abandonment, but it didn't end there. It continued with chosen family and impossible choices and grief that transformed into purpose. Every young person the foundation helps is another chapter. Every Emma update, she's 12 now, brilliant and artistic like her birth mother, adds new pages. The story keeps going, love multiplying and spreading in ways that would make Jennifer and Elena proud. I still visit Jennifer's grave on the anniversary of when she took me in, bringing yellow roses like the ones that grew by her porch. I tell her about the latest students helped, the policies changed, the lives saved because she saved mine first. Sometimes I'm joined by former students she helped, or families who benefited from the fund, or young people currently living in the transition house. We stand together, chosen family bound by her legacy of radical compassion. When people ask about my family now, I tell them the truth, that family isn't just about blood, but about who shows up when you need them most. About teachers who become mothers and strangers who become saviors, about birth children placed with love and bonds that transcend legal definitions. My family includes a teacher who died too young, her wife I never met but whose love shaped my salvation, a daughter raised by others but carried in my heart, and hundreds of young people who've found hope through the foundation. It's messy and complicated and absolutely perfect. The scar tissue from that winter night when everything fell apart has faded but never fully disappeared. Sometimes I still feel that 16-year-old girl's terror, her sense that the world had ended. But then I remember Jennifer's steady presence, her quiet faith that we could build something beautiful from the wreckage. She was right, as she usually was. Love really does multiply when you give it away. Chosen families really can be stronger than biological ones. And sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the foundation for the best things you'll ever do. This is my story, but it's also Jennifer's story, and Elena's and Emma's, and every student the foundation has helped find safety and hope. It's proof that one person's compassion can change everything, that families can be created from nothing but love and determination, that teenage mothers can become successful professionals without sacrificing their children's happiness. It's evidence that the world can be cruel, but people can choose kindness, that systems can fail, but individuals can step up, that happy endings don't always look like what we expect, but can be even better than what we dreamed. When I speak at conferences now, I always end with Jennifer's favorite quote from her classroom wall. In a world where you can be anything, be kind. She lived those words every day, and they saved my life. They created my family. They continue to save lives through every young person who finds shelter and support because a teacher couldn't stand to see a student suffer. Kindness isn't just nice, it's revolutionary. It's family building. It's life-saving. It's the inheritance Jennifer left me, and I'll spend my whole life paying it forward, one chosen family member at a time. Looking back now, 15 years after that cold January night, I can trace the threads that wove together to create the tapestry of my life. Each person who showed kindness, from Mr. Louise with his $20 to the nurses who bent rules so Oliver could stay with Jennifer in the ICU, added their own stitch to the pattern. The social worker who taught me to breathe through panic attacks, the lawyers who worked pro bono to protect us from my father, the doctors who treated me with dignity instead of judgment, they all became part of my extended chosen family. I think about the ripple effects often. Emma, now thriving in middle school, wrote an essay about adoption for her English class that her teacher shared with me. In it, she talked about having two mothers who loved her, one who gave her life and one who gave her a daily life filled with love. She understood, even at 12, that brave choices sometimes look like letting go. Mark and Lisa have raised her to see adoption as another way families are formed, not a secret or a shame, but a story of love multiplying. The foundation has grown beyond anything Jennifer could have imagined. We now operate in 5 states, with transition houses that have sheltered over 300 young people. Each house has a library, Jennifer would have insisted, and house rules written by former residents about respect, responsibility, and radical acceptance. We've helped teenage parents finish high school, supported LGBTQ youth rejected by their families, provided safety for those fleeing abuse. Every success story adds another page to Jennifer's legacy. I married David 3 years ago in the backyard of what was once Jennifer's house, now Hope House, our first transition home. Emma was there as a guest, not knowing the full history but sensing the importance. Former residents served as my wedding party. Young people who'd become teachers, nurses, social workers, artists, all carrying forward the message that your beginning doesn't determine your ending. We read Mary Oliver poems during the ceremony, and I swear I felt Jennifer's presence in the October breeze. My own children, twins born via IVF after years of trying, a boy and a girl we named after Jennifer and Elena, will grow up knowing their origin story includes a chosen grandmother who saved their mother's life. They'll understand that family extends beyond blood, that love multiplies when shared generously, that one person's kindness can echo through generations. They'll visit Emma as courtesy cousins, part of the beautiful, complex web of relationships that trauma and healing can create. The boy who assaulted me died 5 years ago. I found out through a news article, a car accident, ironically. I felt nothing at first, then a strange kind of peace. He could never hurt anyone else. Emma would never have to fear meeting him. The monster from my nightmares had become just another mortality statistic. I chose not to attend the funeral, but I did light a candle for his other victims, the ones who may never have spoken up, hoping they too had found their own Jennifers. Sometimes reporters ask me if I regret placing Emma for adoption. The question always strikes me as odd, like asking if I regret that the sun rises in the east. It simply was the right decision at that time, with those circumstances, for that child. Regret implies I would choose differently now, but I wouldn't. Emma has the life she deserves with parents who were ready for her. I have the life I built with Jennifer's help. Both truths exist simultaneously. What I do regret is that Jennifer didn't live to see all of this. She never met David, never held my twins, never saw the foundation help its 100th student. She didn't get to grow old, to maybe find love again, to become the grandmother figure to dozens more lost children. The unfairness of it still takes my breath away sometimes. But then I remember what she told me about Elena, that grief is love with nowhere to go, so I pour that love into the foundation, into my children, into every young person who needs to hear that their story isn't over. The emergency fund she started with her teaching award money has become an endowment worth millions, thanks to former students who made it big and remembered who helped them when they had nothing. Tech entrepreneurs, doctors, artists. They all credit Jennifer with changing their trajectories. One former student even named a scholarship at Harvard after her. "Miss Foster saw potential in kids everyone else wrote off," he said at the naming ceremony. "She didn't just teach English. She taught us to believe we deserved good things." I've written 3 books now. A memoir about chosen family that became a bestseller, a guide for supporting pregnant and parenting students, and a young adult novel inspired by Jennifer's story. Each one carries her voice forward, her unwavering belief that kindness can change everything. The memoir especially seemed to strike a chord, with thousands of readers sharing their own stories of chosen family, of teachers who became parents, of strangers who became saviors. At readings, people often cry when I get to the part about leaving the hospital without Emma, or finding Jennifer in her bedroom that morning. They ask how I survived such losses. The truth is, I almost didn't. There were nights in college when the grief felt unbearable, when I understood why people talk about dying from a broken heart. But I had promised Jennifer I would graduate. I had promised Emma in my letters that placing her for adoption would let me become someone worthy of her sacrifice. Those promises kept me going when nothing else could. The hardest parts to write were about my biological parents. They've never reached out, never acknowledged their grandchildren, never shown remorse for throwing away their pregnant child. I learned from a cousin that they tell people I died in college, easier than explaining a daughter who refused to conform to their rigid expectations. In their version of reality, they're victims of a wayward child who chose sin. In mine, they're cautionary tales about how conditional love destroys families. But for every parent who fails their child, there's a Jennifer who steps up. I see it in the foundation's work every day. The landlord who reduces rent for a struggling teen mom. The employer who creates flexible schedules around school. The teacher who stocks their classroom with snacks and supplies for hungry students. The coach who notices bruises and asks careful questions. They form an invisible network of care, catching children when their families let them fall. My twins are 5 now, the same age I was when my grandmother died and my parents' affection turned conditional. I watch them play with the fierce protectiveness of someone who knows how quickly childhood security can shatter. But I also see how they've inherited Jennifer's kindness gene, sharing toys without being asked, comforting crying classmates, asking why some kids don't have enough food. We're raising them to be helpers, to look for the lonely and lost, to understand that family is a verb, not just a noun. We take them to visit Jennifer's grave every year on the anniversary of when she took me in. They leave dandelions and drawings, understanding only that Grandma Jenny was very special and loved their mommy very much. As they get older, I'll tell them more of the story, age-appropriate versions of how families can fail, but people can choose to create new ones. How their mother was saved by a teacher's kindness and spent her life trying to pass that salvation forward. The transition houses now have waiting lists, which breaks my heart. We're working on opening 3 more locations, but the need always outpaces the resources. Each application represents a young person in crisis, a potential Jennifer or Emma whose life hangs in the balance. We can't save everyone. Jennifer would have reminded me that no one can. But we save who we can, 1 spare bedroom and 1 act of radical acceptance at a time. I still have the journal I kept during my pregnancy with Emma, water-stained and full of teenage angst and terror. Sometimes I read it to remember how far I've come, how that frightened girl became a woman who speaks at conferences and writes books and mothers children. The handwriting looks foreign now, but the emotions remain familiar. The desperate need to be loved, to be seen as more than a mistake, to believe the future held something besides shame. If I could tell that 16-year-old girl one thing, it would be this. The family you're about to find will be nothing like the one you lost, and that's the best thing that could possibly happen. Jennifer will teach you that love doesn't require blood or legal documents or perfect circumstances. Emma will show you that letting go can be the ultimate act of love. Your chosen family will expand to include hundreds of young people who see you as proof that survival is possible. The story continues to unfold in ways that surprise me. Last month, a young woman showed up at the foundation offices with a baby and a garbage bag of clothes, almost exactly recreating my own arrival in Jennifer's life. As I helped her fill out intake forms for the transition house, I saw myself in her exhausted eyes and Jennifer in my own steady hands. The cycle continues, but now there's infrastructure to support it, professionals who know what to do, a whole community ready to choose this throwaway child and her baby. She's living at Hope House now, the same room where Jennifer first made me feel safe. She's enrolled in online classes, working toward her GED while volunteers help with childcare. Her baby plays in the same living room where Emma took her first steps during a visit. History rhymes rather than repeats, each iteration a little easier because of the path worn by those who came before. She doesn't know it yet, but she's already part of our chosen family, already beginning to heal. When she's ready, I'll tell her what Jennifer told me, that she's stronger than she knows, that this isn't the end of her story, but a particularly difficult chapter. I'll show her the pictures of Emma thriving with her adoptive family if she's considering that path, or connect her with resources for parenting if that's what she chooses. Most importantly, I'll make sure she knows what I learned in Jennifer's yellow house, that she deserves love and safety and a future, regardless of how she got here. The Foundation's latest project is a scholarship specifically for former foster youth and those estranged from their biological families. We're calling it the Foster Elena Family Fellowship, and it will provide not just tuition, but mentorship, holiday hosting, and the kind of consistent support that chosen families offer. Jennifer always said that sometimes the most radical thing you can do is simply show up consistently for someone who's never had that. This fellowship will institutionalize that showing up. I think often about the alternative timeline, the one where Jennifer didn't find me that morning in the school bathroom. Where would I have ended up? Statistics suggest not anywhere good. Homeless youth face astronomical rates of violence, exploitation, and early death. Teen mothers without support rarely finish their educations. Trauma compounds when left untreated. In that alternate timeline, I'm not writing books or running a foundation or raising twins with a loving partner. In that timeline, another girl lost to the world's casual cruelty. But Jennifer did find me. She did take me home. She did choose to love me when my biological family couldn't, and because of that single act of radical kindness, hundreds of other young people have found safety and support. Emma has parents who adored her from the first second. My twins have a mother who understands that family is about choice and commitment, not just genetics. The ripples continue to spread wider and wider, touching lives in ways we'll never fully know. When people call me brave for sharing my story, I think of Jennifer grading papers at her dining room table while I grew Emma inside me. She was the brave one, taking in a traumatized teenager when she was still grieving her wife. She was the one who risked her career and reputation to do what was right. She was the one who showed me that bravery isn't the absence of fear, but moving forward with love despite it. Everything I am, everything the Foundation does, is just an echo of her original courage. The last time I saw my father was at a grocery store 5 years ago. He looked older, smaller, less like the monster from my memories, and more like a sad man who'd chosen pride over love. Our eyes met across the produce section, and for a moment I thought he might speak. But he turned away, pretending not to see me, maintaining the fiction that I'd died rather than face the reality of what he'd done. I felt nothing but pity. He'd thrown away a daughter and gained nothing but the cold comfort of his rigid principles. My mother sends a Christmas card every year to the Foundation's public address. No message, just her signature. I think it's her way of saying she knows what I'm doing, maybe even that she's proud, but she still can't break free from my father's control. I keep the cards in a box, evidence of the complicated nature of family bonds. She chose him over me, chose appearances over truth, but some small part of her reaches out each December. It's not enough, but it's something. The irony is that my biological parents' rejection led me to Jennifer, and Jennifer led me to a life fuller and richer than anything they could have imagined for me. Their cruelty became the catalyst for finding true family. Their conditional love taught me to offer unconditional love to others. Their failure to protect me made me fierce about protecting others. In trying to destroy me, they accidentally created someone stronger than they ever were. This is what I know now that I couldn't have known at 16. Family isn't about blood or law or tradition. It's about showing up in the hard moments. It's about choosing each other over and over again. It's about creating space for people to be their full, complex, imperfect selves. It's about Jennifer opening her door to a desperate teenager. It's about Emma's adoptive parents honoring her birth story. It's about every person who's ever offered shelter to someone in crisis. The Foundation's mission statement, written collaboratively by former residents, reads, "We believe in the radical power of chosen family to transform lives. We create spaces where throwaway children become cherished family members, where trauma becomes the foundation for healing, where one person's kindness multiplies into community transformation." Jennifer never got to see those words, but they're hers just the same. Her philosophy distilled into actionable truth. As I finish writing this, my twins are napping upstairs in the house David and I bought near Hope House. Emma sent a video this morning of her violin recital, her face serious with concentration, then breaking into a grin at the applause. The Foundation's intake coordinator just called about 2 siblings who need placement, and we're figuring out how to make room. This is my life now, full of the beautiful chaos that chosen families create, rich with connections that span biology and geography and time. Somewhere, a teacher is noticing a student in crisis. Somewhere, a stranger is opening their home to someone in need. Somewhere, a birth mother is making an impossible choice with love. Somewhere, chosen families are forming in the spaces where biological families failed. The story Jennifer and I began continues to write itself in lives I'll never meet, in kindnesses I'll never witness, in families that will form, because someone learned that love is a choice we can make again and again and again. This is my story, but it's bigger than me. It's the story of everyone who's ever been thrown away and then found. It's the story of everyone who's ever opened their door to someone in need. It's the story of love refusing to be limited by narrow definitions. It's Jennifer's story, living on in every young person who finds safety because she taught me that chosen family is real family. It's proof that the worst things that happen to us can become the foundation for the best things we do. That kindness is contagious, that one person really can change everything. And it all started with a teacher who looked at a pregnant, homeless teenager and saw a daughter who needed a mother, a future writer who needed encouragement, a human being who deserved love without conditions. Jennifer Foster saved my life by choosing to make me family. Now I spend my days creating families for others, multiplying her love exponentially, proving again and again that sometimes the families we choose are the ones that save us. That's the inheritance she left. Not just money or houses, but the radical belief that anyone can choose to be family to someone who needs it, and that choice, repeated over and over, can transform the world. Yesterday, I received a letter that brought everything full circle in a way I never expected. It was from a woman named Claire, written in careful handwriting on lavender stationery. She introduced herself as Elena's younger sister, Jennifer's sister-in-law, whom I'd never known existed. She'd been estranged from Elena and Jennifer for years, due to family conflicts about Elena's sexuality, but she'd followed Jennifer's story through news articles about the foundation. She wanted to meet, to understand the woman who'd become Jennifer's daughter, to maybe find redemption for the years she'd wasted in judgment. We met at a quiet cafe near Hope House, and I saw Elena's eyes in her face, the same warm brown but weathered by regret. She brought photo albums I'd never seen, Jennifer and Elena in their early days, radiant with new love. Their commitment ceremony in Massachusetts before it was legal everywhere, surrounded by chosen family since their biological families had rejected them. Pictures of the nursery they'd painted together, the one that became my room, filled with such hope for a child who never came. Until I did, broken and desperate, the answer to prayers they'd stopped praying. Claire cried as she told me how she'd let her parents' prejudice poison her relationship with her sister. How she'd missed Elena's final months, too proud to apologize for the cruel things she'd said. How she'd wanted to reach out to Jennifer after Elena died, but didn't know how to bridge the gap her judgment had created. She'd watched from afar as Jennifer rebuilt her life, then saved mine, then died too young without Claire ever saying she was sorry. The weight of those unspoken words had grown heavier each year. "Elena would have loved you," she told me, clutching her coffee cup like an anchor. "She always wanted children, and Jennifer said you became everything they dreamed of. I'm so sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry for all of it." I reached across the table and took her weathered hands in mine, thinking of all the forms family can take, all the ways love can surprise us. Here was another thread in the tapestry, another connection to the women who'd saved me, another chance for choosing family over old wounds. Claire comes to Sunday dinners now, teaching my twins the Portuguese songs Elena used to sing, filling in gaps in family history I never knew existed. She volunteers at Hope House, reading to the younger children, offering the unconditional acceptance she wishes she'd given her sister. Redemption comes in many forms, and watching her heal while helping others heal feels like Elena and Jennifer orchestrating one more miracle. Even death can't stop chosen families from growing. The letter that started all of this, the one Jennifer wrote me before she died, sits framed in my office at the foundation. I read it sometimes when the work feels overwhelming, when the need outpaces our resources, when I wonder if we're really making a difference. Her handwriting, so familiar from years of grading my essays, reminds me that change happens one person at a time. "My dearest Sarah," it begins, "if you're reading this, then our time together was shorter than we hoped. But please know that you gave my life meaning again when I thought meaning was lost forever." She wrote about the morning she found me in the school bathroom, how she'd been going through the motions of living without really being alive since Elena's death. How my crisis became her purpose, how watching me grow from a terrified child into a fierce young mother taught her that love could survive anything. "You think I saved you," she wrote, "but we saved each other. That's what family does." The letter goes on for pages, instructions mixed with love, practical advice woven through with the poetry she couldn't help but include. Last week, Emma sent her first real letter to the foundation, not through her parents but on her own, having researched the address online. At 13, she's starting to understand the complexities of her story, starting to ask harder questions about why and how and what if. She thanked me for choosing her parents, for giving her life even when it cost me everything. She asked if we could write to each other directly now, if I could help her understand where she came from. Mark and Lisa support this connection, trusting the openness they've cultivated from the beginning. I wrote back immediately, telling her about the songs I sang to her in the hospital, about how Jennifer helped me be brave enough to let her go, about how her existence transformed tragedy into purpose. I sent photos she'd never seen. Me pregnant at graduation, Jennifer reading to my belly, the nursery at Hope House that bears her middle name. I told her she could ask me anything, that her story was hers to know fully. That birth mothers and adoptive mothers and chosen grandmothers all loved her in their own ways. The twins ask complicated questions now, too. Why didn't my first parents want me? Why did Grandma Jenny die? Where is Emma's other family? I answer as honestly as I can, calibrating truth to their developmental level. They're growing up understanding that families form in many ways, that love isn't limited by traditional structures, that sometimes people who should protect you don't, but others will step forward to fill that gap. They know their privilege, wanted, planned for, surrounded by stable love, and already show signs of wanting to share that stability with others. David often jokes that he married into the most complicated family tree imaginable, branches extending through choice and necessity, grafted together by trauma and healing, spanning multiple states and decades of connection. He's embraced it fully, serving on the foundation board, driving supplies to Hope House, being the stable male presence many of our residents have never had. He understands that loving me means loving this entire chosen network, means our home will always have room for one more, means holidays include whoever needs a place to belong. The ripples continue in ways that surprise me. A Hollywood producer wants to adapt my memoir into a limited series, promising to handle the story with care and donate profits to the foundation. Universities invite me to establish programs for supporting pregnant and parenting students. Policymakers cite our transition house model in legislation about youth homelessness. What started as one teacher's kindness has become a movement, proof that individual actions can create systemic change. But it's the individual stories that matter most. Like Maya, who aged out of foster care pregnant and alone, now graduating nursing school while her daughter thrives in our childcare program. Like James, kicked out for being transgender, now mentoring other LGBTQ youth while finishing his teaching degree. Like Destiny, whose parents chose addiction over her, building her own sober family through our recovery support groups. Each success validates Jennifer's belief that everyone deserves a chance to rewrite their story. The hardest part of this work is saying no. Every week we get more applications than we have beds, more crisis calls than we can answer, more young people who need exactly what Jennifer gave me, radical acceptance and practical support. We stretch resources creatively, network with other organizations, advocate for policy changes. But some nights I lie awake thinking about the ones we couldn't help, wondering if they found their own Jennifers or fell through the cracks entirely. That's why we're launching the Jennifer Foster Crisis Response Network next year, a rapid intervention program that connects young people in crisis with trained volunteer families before they end up on the streets. Think of it as systematic Jennifering, matching thrown-away kids with adults ready to provide temporary stabilization. Not everyone can take in a teenager long-term, but many can offer a week of safety while we work on permanent solutions. It's ambitious and complicated, and exactly what Jennifer would have done. My biological father died last year. I found out through the same cousin who'd once posted my photo without permission, setting off the chain of events that led to Jennifer's collapse. He wanted me to know in case I wanted to attend the funeral, to make peace. I thought about it for exactly 1 minute before deciding that my peace didn't require proximity to the man who threw me away. I sent flowers to my mother with a simple card, "Thinking of you." She never responded, but the check wasn't returned, so maybe that's something. The twins will never meet their biological grandparents, but they're surrounded by chosen grandparents. Claire, who teaches them about their Portuguese heritage. Former Hope House residents who've become successful adults and shower them with attention. Jennifer's teacher friends who tell stories about their Grandma Jenny. The village that raised me continues to raise them. Proof that family extends far beyond traditional definitions. Sometimes I dream about Jennifer. She's always teaching in these dreams, standing at a chalkboard explaining something vital while I try to take notes. But when I wake up, I can never remember what she was teaching, only the feeling of being seen and valued and pushed to be better. David says I talk in my sleep during these dreams, carrying on conversations with someone who's been gone for years but never really left. Love transcends death when it's woven into enough lives. The summer writing program we started for Hope House residents has produced 3 published authors so far. They write their truths with the same raw honesty Jennifer encouraged in me, turning trauma into art that helps others heal. We bring in established writers as mentors, people who understand that sometimes the only way to survive your story is to tell it. The anthology they produced last year won awards and raised enough money to fund the program for 3 more years. That 16-year-old girl standing in the snow, garbage bags cutting into her frozen fingers, could never have imagined this life. Couldn't have dreamed that rejection would lead to redemption, that loss would multiply into so much love. She just wanted somewhere warm to sleep, someone to tell her she wasn't worthless. She got that, and so much more. A mother who chose her, a daughter who transformed her, a life dedicated to making sure others get the same chance at chosen family. When people ask if I forgive my biological parents, I tell them forgiveness isn't the right word. I understand them, their limitations, their fears, their inability to love beyond conditions. I pity them for what they missed, for choosing reputation over relationship. But forgiveness implies they've acknowledged wrongdoing, and they never have. Instead, I've built a life that proves their rejection wrong every single day. That's better than forgiveness. That's triumph. The story could end here, with success and stability and the satisfaction of turning pain into purpose. But that's not how life works. The story continues every time someone knocks on Hope House's door. It continues in Emma's growing understanding of her complex origins. It continues in the twins learning to read from the same books Jennifer used to teach me. It continues in the network of chosen families spreading across the country, each one proof that love doesn't require permission or pedigree. Next month, we break ground on the Jennifer Foster Memorial Library at Hope House. Every resident will have access to the books that saved both our lives, the stories that taught us we deserved better than what we'd been given. Local authors have donated first editions. Publishers have contributed entire collections. Jennifer's teaching colleagues are creating a curriculum around bibliotherapy, using literature to heal trauma. Even in death, she's still teaching, still saving lives through the power of story. This is what I want you to know, you who might be reading this in your own moment of crisis. Wondering if your family's rejection means you're worthless. You're not. You deserve love without conditions, support without judgment, a chance to become who you're meant to be. Sometimes the families we're born into fail us, but that doesn't mean we're failures. It means we get to choose our own families, build our own networks of love, create our own definitions of belonging. The snow has started falling outside my window as I write this final chapter, reminding me of that night 20 years ago when everything changed. But now I watch it from warmth and safety, surrounded by the family Jennifer's kindness made possible. The twins are building a snowman in the yard while David helps them roll the middle section. Claire is in the kitchen making Elena's soup recipe for tonight's Hope House dinner. Emma's latest letter sits on my desk, full of teenage questions and growing wisdom. This is my family, sprawling, complicated, bound by choice rather than chance. It includes the dead who guide us and the living who continue their work. It encompasses birth children raised by others and bonus children who found us when they needed shelter. It stretches across years and miles, connected by the radical belief that love multiplies when given freely. It started with a teacher who couldn't bear to see a student suffer and continues with everyone who chooses compassion over comfort. The phone rings. Another crisis, another young person who needs what Jennifer gave me. I answer because that's what we do in this chosen family. We show up, we open doors, we create space for healing. We prove every day that kindness isn't just nice but necessary, that families aren't just born but built, that the worst things that happen to us can become the foundations for the best things we do. This is Jennifer's legacy living on in every life we touch, the radical, revolutionary act of choosing to be family to someone who needs it. And so the story continues, not ending but expanding, reaching out to embrace everyone who needs to know they're worthy of love, capable of healing, deserving of family in all its beautiful chosen forms.